Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. On behalf of Holt Construction, welcome to our series, Get to Work on Terminal 8, the strategic programming we have created in partnership with American Airlines to engage, inform, and hire certified MWBEs, LBEs, and members of Queens community interested in working on the JFK Terminal 8 expansion. My name is Chris Asaro, and I serve as president of Holt Construction, a family-owned and operated full-service construction management and general contracting firm. If you have never worked with Holt before, you should know that when it comes to diversity and inclusion, our commitment is built from the top down and from the inside out. We have taken on the JFK Terminal 8 expansion like all of our other projects, and that includes creating a tailored, unique, and comprehensive diversity plan. I'm excited to kick off today's session, and I hope you find the information engaging and informative. On behalf of Holt, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us, and I look forward to connecting and working with you. Now it is my pleasure to welcome our project partner and familiar face to this project, Sade Olapeckin-Lewis, Regional Director of Government and Airport Affairs at American Airlines Terminal 8.
Hello, everyone. On behalf of American Airlines and the John F. Kennedy International Airport Terminal 8 expansion, welcome to today's Get to Work session. My name is Sade Olapeckin-Lewis, and I serve as the Regional Director of Government Affairs for American Airlines. JFK is getting ready to welcome a new American Airlines Terminal 8. The project will improve the overall customer experience with a total of 70,400 square feet of added space, including 33,000 square feet of public space. Another 57,500 square feet of existing space will be refurbished. To build the new Terminal 8, American Airlines and Holt Construction are committed to engaging, preparing, and hiring certified minority and women-owned business enterprises, MWBEs, local business enterprises, LBEs, and construction workers for this project. This series of programming entitled Get Ready to Work at Terminal 8 has been strategically designed for certified firms and the local community workforce who would like to work on the JFK Terminal 8 expansion. I want to sincerely thank you for taking time out of your busy day to attend today's session. As a small business owner, we know you have a lot on your plate, and we will be respectful of your time today. Today's program is called Insurance, Understanding OCIPS. Insurance policies and the coverages they provide are often very confusing. This session, led by insurance industry experts, will help you understand the coverages included in the owner-controlled insurance program, also called OCIP, provided by American Airlines. It will also review the additional insurance you will be required to have in order to bid on a project. This session will demystify your insurance policy for you. Now, let's get started with today's session.
Thank you, Sade, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. Insurance policies and the coverages they provide are often very confusing. This session, led by insurance industry experts, will help you understand the coverages included in the owner-controlled insurance policy, or OCIP, provided by American Airlines for the Terminal 8 project. It will also review additional insurance you will be required to have in order to bid on a project at Terminal 8. This session will demystify your insurance policy for you. Here with us today is David Delarue, Senior Vice President, Texas Construction Practice at Willis Towers Watson. Good afternoon, David, and thank you for joining with us today.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to be here.
Let's start with the first question. What is an OCIP?
Well, you know, it's an owner-controlled insurance program, or OCIP. It's called, you'll hear it referred to as wrap-up or SIP, or contractor-controlled insurance program. Essentially, it's an insurance program that provides general liability, in this case, general liability for the owner or sponsor of the wrap-up, or OCIP, the general contractor, and all eligible subcontractors of every tier. And it's designed to provide coverage on a very specific basis. Typically, it's a project basis. So if you think of a project inside the box, the OCIP box, it covers the general liability of those contractors working inside that box. Outside that box is a different story, but inside the box, it's covered by general liability. If it's a general liability loss, it's going to be covered by the OCIP. And if you are an eligible contractor enrolled in the program, then you would have that coverage provided by the program.
Great. One question that I have, and I know a lot of people have, is what's the difference between an OCIP and a CSIP?
Oh, well, as we mentioned just earlier about the references of, you'll hear those terms used all the time, but they are a little bit different. They typically provide the same types of coverage. However, the owner-controlled insurance program is sponsored by the project owner, in this case, American Airlines. A contractor-controlled program is a program sponsored by the contractor, again, providing project-specific coverage for a specific scope within a box, if you will. So that's the difference.
Great. So we have excluded parties within our OCIP for Terminal 8. Could you explain who's covered by the OCIP for Terminal 8 and who's not? What are excluded parties?
Yeah, typically what insurers who provide the insurance or coverage for these programs look to is they try to cover on-site construction operations. There are some entities that, while involved in the construction, are not really on-site in a full-time basis or performing services or duties which are typically construction, pure construction. And in this case, the program excludes vendors, material dealers, suppliers, hazardous material handlers like remediation contractors, guard services, and so what I would ask all contractors looking at enrolling or participating in the project is to review the contract language or the insurance manual. That insurance manual provides very detailed information about exactly who is eligible for this program and who is not eligible. And it's real important because when you bid this project, you need to bid in a specific way. And eligible contractors bid one way, ineligible contractors bid another way.
That's perfect. What types of coverages do the subcontractors have under the OCIP for Terminal 8?
Well, all contractors should carry a general liability policy. And in the insurance business, risk or exposures are siloed, right? And you have various silos. One of those silos is general liability. So general liability does not include, auto liability, does not include pollution liability, does not include professional liability. And there's a couple of others, but those are really the critical ones that, and it doesn't cover builder's risk. So really what you're looking for is that exposure, and most contractors operating are going to understand general liability. They're going to provide it, but this coverage basically stands in lieu of or in place of that typical general liability coverage that contractors bring to the project. So, and it is their coverage. They need to think of it in that way. So if you look at a subcontractor, they'll carry the auto, the workers' compensation, the general liability, the excess liability, pollution, professional. What we're asking is we're gonna look at that one specific silo of general liability, and in this case, the OCIP will provide that coverage for the contractors when they are on site and enrolled in the program, and again, performing duties within their scope.
Great. Does the subcontractor safety rating affect their participation in the OCIP?
No, there's no insurance company restriction on their EMR or their safety rating. This is something that typically is evaluated and decided upon by the general contractor or the contractor awarding those subcontracts. So that, and in some cases, you will see owners provide limitations within the program for EMRs, but in this case, there is not a restriction in place in the contracts or in the manuals.
Great. A question that we get a lot is, do I need to secure additional insurance when I'm bidding a job or only after I win the job and begin work? Do you think that they should have the correct insurance in place when they are bidding the work?
Well, look, first of all, anytime you are bidding a project, it's important that you are prepared to meet the insurance requirements. I would not rush out and buy, increased auto liability limits, for instance, for a project like this until you win that project. But what I would do is I would begin dialoguing with my agent or my broker, and I would let them know what I'm doing. I would give them a copy of the insurance manual that should be part of the bid specs, and say, I'm bidding this work, there's insurance requirements. I need to know if my policies meet those requirements. And then if they don't, I need to know, how quickly I can get that coverage put in place. Can you price it for me without binding coverage, but price it for me so I'm prepared to bind it and I know what it, in fact, is going to cost to execute this contract. And that way they can prepare themselves and price it accordingly.
Great. That's exactly what we tell our subcontractors. We also ask if they don't have the coverage needed, that they get a letter from their insurance carrier saying that they can indeed get that coverage, so that we know that if they are the low bidder, they can get that coverage, that additional coverage that's needed for them to do the project.
Yeah. I will tell you, one of the important things is to make sure that they dialogue with their agent or their broker, because this is important. If you are an eligible contractor and you will plan on enrolling in the program, which is mandatory but not automatic, there can be competitive pricing issues at stake when you bid that work. If you know, for instance, that you can fit within the OCIP, and you realize that, well, I'm bidding this work without the cost of general liability insurance because it's being provided to me, and I'm an eligible contractor and I'm going to enroll in the program. Then you can discuss with your agent how you can what pricing you can remove out of your bid to make yourself more competitive, because again, this is a bid net program, so you'll want to make sure that your agent, will actually, guide you through that process and help you determine what pricing can I remove or should I remove from my bid in order to, account for the OCIP, which is going to provide my general liability coverage while I'm on site.
Great. As far as subcontractors, when they have their own insurance certificates and they submit them, are there any carriers or insurance companies that are not allowed within the OCIP? Are there insurance companies that are a little bit questionable, and is there a list of those?
Yes, in fact, there are requirements for contractor provided coverages, and those minimum requirements are outlined in the insurance manual. And I would rely on the insurance contract language in the bid documents, as well as that manual, to make sure, again, that your insurance companies meet or qualify for coverage. Because remember, not all of the coverage that you'll be using on site will be provided to you through an owner-sponsored program. You will be required to provide some coverage for working on to work on the site, and that coverage needs to be compliant with the Port Authority and American Airlines, as well as your general contractor or your awarding contractor's requirements, because they can be different. There's nothing that prevents a general contractor or an awarding contractor to put in more stringent or higher requirements for insurance. But there is a minimum requirement that American Airlines is looking for, which aligns with the port's requirements, and that is outlined in the insurance manual.
Great. Question, not specifically for Terminal 8, but just in general for people that have questions regarding insurance. What kind of services, relationships, what do you think best practices for subcontractors dealing with their own insurance company? What questions should they be asking? How should they be handling? I know that insurance does mystify lots of people, how can you help clarify a little bit of how to navigate?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, as I've mentioned earlier, you know, you need to communicate with your agent or your broker. They are a licensed professional who understands this type of operation, and my guess is most of them have had some experience even with how an owner-controlled insurance program impacts their practice program, because it will. There is a tie-in that's required. And so I would think that the number one thing you want to do is before you put your pricing together and submit your bid, make sure that you communicate with your agent or your broker, get them the manual, ask them to review it, ask them to give you their advices on the insurances that you're going to be required to provide, and on the insurances that are being provided to you through some kind of program, project-specific program. I also would suggest, and I tell my clients, I deal with clients both that owner-controlled insurance programs, contractor control programs, and subcontractors who work inside those programs. And I tell them, one of the things you want to make sure you do is keep a record. And this is smart for every project you work in that's sponsored, that there's some kind of wrap-up or SIP or OCIP, CSIP involved. Keep a very detailed record of every program that you're involved in. That includes copies of manuals. It could be all electronic. Copies of manuals, copies of policies, copies of certificates. These things could be very important down the road if a loss should happen and it's 6 years post-completion and there's coverage available for completed operations. You want to make sure that you have evidence. I have had a number of calls in my career where, you know, someone has been sued on a project, some losses happened, and they need to have evidence that they were enrolled in the program. You know, most of the time we have that, and the industry is getting better at keeping those records, but it becomes it can be a real challenge for a subcontractor to figure out when was I enrolled, how do I prove I was enrolled. So keep those documents. Not only that, but your own insurance agent and insurance companies will oftentimes ask for information regarding what wrap-ups, what OCIPs and CSIPs you've been involved in the past. And it's just so important to your own business operations and your own practice programs that you actually have that information available.
Great. Thank you, David.
Oh, my pleasure. I look forward to answering any questions in the session that I can and that arise. Okay. Happy to be here.